Hello and welcome to the channel. Today I'll be reading Fan Pai Bai Hua Guāng Huán, The Villain's White Halo by Hao Dayi Danmei Shēng Zhi, chapters 21 through 25. So I went and found the web posted version of the story, and I've been able to find some of the words that I was having trouble with before. It takes a little time, but it's worth it because I've also found some of the words I thought I had correct actually weren't. If I find one that's wrong, I'm changing it in the slides going forward. Hopefully there aren't many, but if the tones or hanzi change, that's why. As always, please remember that this novel is rated mature by the publisher, so check the description for a link to content warnings. Chapter 21. As soon as Yin Biyue took hold of Luo Ningquan's note, he gripped his sword and injected the stamp with his vital qi. His form vanished from the pier. He sensed the indistinct howling of the wind and waves, the clamor of markets, the flying dust upon the official road, and the dazzling sun of early summer, even though all of them flashed past in a moment's time. The next second, his foot touched solid ground. Before he could see the trees in front of him, a powerful force yanked him backward. Even though he had his defenses up, Yin Biyue stumbled. With no time to turn around, he injected a massive amount of vital qi into his sheathed sword and stabbed behind him, only to have his strike dissolve as if it were nothing. A small ascensioner! He didn't resort to his contingency, however. The pulling force disappeared, and a voice rang out behind him. "Wait, pal, I mean no harm." The speaker released Yin Biyue's shoulder and withdrew his aura as he stepped back. "A cultivator friend?" Finally, Yin Biyue turned his head. He was taken aback, not because of how strikingly handsome the man was, but because he looked familiar. The man was stubbly, and his pulled-back hair was messy. He had on somewhat worn, dark brown sparring robes, and a wine flask hung from his hip, while a Chang Dao rested on his back. With this uncouth, down in the dumps in the Jianghu, wandering and indulging in drink, get-up, he didn't seem like a cultivator at all. Upon closer inspection, however, he had striking features that matched the thick eyebrows that arched toward his temples. His clear, piercing gaze softened the flirtatious charm of his dreamy almond eyes. Overall, he seemed like the unhurried and disobedient sort. The man was studying Yin Biyue as well. "Lao Se?" The chatterbox's voice sounded behind them. "San Shi Xiang, why are you here?" Now, shocked beyond measure, the man turned his head and exclaimed, "Lao Wu?" He lifted his hand and pointed at Yin Biyue and Duan Changshuan. "Wow, how did you guys just pop out of nowhere? And Lao Se, what happened to your hair? I didn't even recognize you." Yin Biyue finally figured out why this man looked so familiar. He was the elder disciple who rarely returned to the Zangya Mountains, Yan Shēng. The last time they met had been when Duan Changshuan joined the sect and prostrated himself in front of their master's portrait. Yin Biyue nodded at Yan Shēng. "San Shixiang, it's a long story." He trailed off, leaving the question unanswered, since he had no clue what the answer for his white hair was. He changed the subject. "Wu Shidi and I have come to the southern continent to attend the flower-plucking tournament." "What about you, San Shixiang?" asked Duan Changshuan. Yan Shēng shifted awkwardly. "Me? It's an even longer story." Without warning, he tensed and his expression hardened. "Conceal your breathing." Yin Biyue and Duan Changshuan tensed up too. Their elder Shi Xiang was already in the small ascension state. Whom could he be hiding from? His eyes fell on where he had landed. An array flag was planted not 2 inches from that spot. Yan Shēng had probably yanked him back so as not to disturb the array. 8 more such flags were planted in the woods around them in a zigzagging circle with about a 30-foot radius. The 3 of them were in the center. "This is a concealment array," Yin Biyue concluded after studying the formation. It was a crude arrangement that anyone who'd learned a bit about arrays could discern, if the caster were not someone like Yan Shēng, a cultivator with a high level of ability. Yin Biyue flicked his fingers and shot forth a stream of vital qi. As the gentle breeze swept past, 2 of the array flags shifted directions. He changed his hand sign, and the northernmost flag shifted slightly southward by half an inch. The adjustments had been minimal, but the array was transformed. It felt as if even the wind quieted upon entering the formation. Yan Xing sensed the change and relaxed. He gave Yin Biyue a hearty slap on the shoulder. Good going, Lao Si. His generous gesture made Yin Biyue lower his head a little in embarrassment. You flatter me, Shixiang. He was well aware that the adjustments to the array couldn't have been possible had Yan Xing not trusted him. But if Yan Xing's foe was stronger, wouldn't they see through the array? And if they were weaker, why hide? The nearby woods rustled as the faint white form of a man passed through the trees. Grasses and leaves crunched under his boots as he neared. He was making no attempt to hide himself. Finally, he emerged from the brush, a sword in hand. He drew closer and closer to the array, close enough that Yin Biyue could see the ink landscapes painted across his expansive sleeves, and the dour, severe look on his face. Yan Xing tensed again, this time with nerves, and he clamped his mouth shut, holding his breath. His anxious state affected Yin Biyue and Duan Changshuan, who raised their guards and stared intently at the newcomer. A familiar voice suddenly broke the suspenseful atmosphere. Junior sect leader Song? Said Luo Mingquan. Startled, the one who'd been called Song turned around. Luo Shixiang? Yin Biyue could finally confirm that Xiansheng no longer wanted Luo Mingquan dead, at least not for now. Otherwise, the slightest tampering in the spatial passageway would have been enough to erase Luo Mingquan to the very last bone. On the contrary, Xiansheng seemed to genuinely want the three of them to attend the flower-plucking tournament without issue. Hilariously, Xiansheng probably hadn't predicted their current situation, because he wasn't so bored that he'd actively divine the relationship between Yan Xing and junior sect leader Song. Outside the array, Luo Mingquan and the junior sect leader exchanged greetings. Why are you here so suddenly, Luo Shixiang? A surge of sea beasts in the floating sea has stopped the ships from sailing, Luo Mingquan said. Fortunately, Headmaster Xiansheng sent a note embedded with spatial magic that sent me here. Junior sect leader, have you seen anyone else in these woods? I have not, but if it's a note from Xiansheng, I'm sure it's fine. Maybe your companions have landed somewhere farther along. Don't worry, Luo Shixiang. It just so happens I'm searching for someone too. We can search together. The future sect leader of the Zangya Mountains and the junior sect leader of the Qinglu Sword Sect, Duan Changshuan, commented from the safety of the array. Well, seems they get along nicely. The Zangya Mountains didn't have a junior sect leader title, but there was an understanding that the chief disciple was to become the next sect leader. From the conversation between the pair, Yin Biyue identified the young man as Song Tang, the next sect leader of Qinglu Sword Sect, pleading gray sword Song Tang. He was older, higher in cultivation level, and had claimed fame much earlier than his peer of the same sect, the Tempest Sword Hong Shan. Yin Qing breathed a sigh of relief now that Luo Mingquan had distracted Song Tang. Wait, that guy looks familiar too. When he squinted his eyes for a closer look, realization dawned on him. I see. So it's Luo Mingquan from Xiqian Pi Lao Si Lao Wu. Do you guys have any idea how we can get him to lure Song away? Yin Biyue nodded. He concentrated his vital qi and, controlling it with his consciousness, transmitted a message to Luo Mingquan's ears. Luo Shixiang, Dan Shidi and I are located inside Yan Xing Shixiang's concealment array approximately 10 feet north of you. Yan Shixiang is the one junior sect leader Song is searching for. The implication was clear. Since they were inside the array, they didn't want to be found. Shock flickered across Luo Mingquan's eyes, though his expression remained unchanged. Beside him, Song Tang didn't notice anything amiss. My search isn't urgent, Luo Mingquan said, smiling. I plan to go ahead to Ye City and find temporary lodging for the duration of the flower-plucking tournament. The flower-plucking tournament this year was hosted by Qinglu sword sect. As the junior sect leader, Song Cang handled most of the affairs regarding the event, such as the lodging for the disciples of various sects. Sure enough, Song Cang quickly turned apologetic. How inconsiderate of me to forget you have traveled from afar. Luo Shixiang. You must be weary. My sect already has your accommodation prepared. I will take you there right now. Yan Xing watched as the two disappeared into the woods before he slapped Yin Biyue hard on the shoulder a second time. You're amazing, Lao Si, he exclaimed. Yan Xing was very different from what Yin Biyue had imagined, and their interaction made him recall many things about him. Chapter 22. Yan Xing's Chang Dao was named Duan Shui, Water Slasher. He hadn't been the one to name it, as he didn't deem one necessary. A weapon was a weapon. It was the world who had given it the name. That year, Yan Xing had just begun his journey down the mountain. Upon the desolate plains of the eastern continent, he beheld the majestic Wei River that torrented across the land. Feeling fortunate, he followed the course of the river, his energy surging with each step. By the time he came to the middle reaches of the river, he had attained the small ascension state. His breakthrough had come too easily, and his aura was so overwhelming that it caused great displeasure to an elder who happened to pass by. The elder, a man from the Baopu sect, ordered his entourage of servants to set down his palanquin. He emerged, lowering himself graciously to Yan Xing's level. From across the Wei River, he scolded, Yan Xing, who is your master, boy? How rude and disrespectful you are. Why do you not restrain your aura when meeting an elder? Such arrogance. You will not go far in your cultivation. Know that slashing water makes it flow stronger. The path of cultivation is treacherous, with none to help you through the hardships but yourself. Young people these days. They obtain a bit of power and think they are invincible. You will surely stumble in the future. The elder's speech was worded like a lecture, yet it teemed with curses and resentment. How unreasonable, Yan Xing thought at the time. A river lies between us. Even if my aura is out, it wouldn't have impacted you. Besides, your level is only a little higher than mine. That man had not taught him, nor raised him, yet he had put on the air of a teacher and scolded him. It reminded Yan Xing of something his shifu once told him. Not everyone who has lived a long time or has a high cultivation level carries themselves with the poise of a senior master. There will always be some who, the stronger they are, the more arrogant they become. The longer they live, the more they fear death. Those individuals cannot bear to see young people show off their talents. It makes them embarrassed and frustrated by their own decline. The sword sage had regarded Yan Xing as he continued to reminisce. I encountered many such individuals when I was younger. Of my 3 disciples, you resemble me the most, so you are likely to encounter them as well. When you do, remember this. Fight them if you can win. If you cannot, piss them off. Thus, he concluded, young people need to show off. It was unfortunate that Duan Chongshen hadn't joined the sect yet. He could piss people off in record time. Yan Xing had been very young at the time, but he had his own methods. He was youthful, and if something displeased him, he would draw his weapon. So he pulled out his Chang Dao and slashed down, not at the man across the river, but at the mighty Wei River itself. Unrelenting, unforgiving waves, 3,000 feet high, surged upward to the sky. The vital qi of the elder across the river rushed out, and he rose into the air to meet the colossal wall of water in a powerful clash. The fight between the elder and Yan Xing lasted over a day, inundating both banks of the river in a deluge. The disturbance attracted many people to the desolate plains, but as the fight was between 2 cultivators of the small ascension state, they could only watch from afar. By the time the river water lowered, the spectators were shocked to find the Wei River was henceforth severed into 2. The young man's Chang Dao was sheathed, his clothes were sodden, and his black hair dripped. Yet none of the spectators cared how unkempt he looked. They were too full of satisfaction at witnessing his triumph. My master is Wei Zhengfeng, Yan Xing said. This was an answer to the elder, who had demanded to know his master. Next, he declared, slashing water makes it flow stronger? I don't see it. As if to say, I showed you slashed water. No one knew the rest of the tale because the story was exciting enough as it was, enough to make a strong young man famous. He had slashed Wei River with his Chang Dao, and the river forked into two branches. Thus, his Changdao came to be called Duan Shui. Such a brazen character, one who dared draw his Changdao to slash water in the face of a Baopu sect elder halfway to the Great Ascension State, was skulking in the forest outside of Ye City and poorly casting array magic to hide from a young man whose cultivation level was beneath his. What tragic business. Fascinatingly tragic. It wasn't just Duan Chengxuan who was curious what had transpired between the two now that Yin the Yue had remembered that story. Upon seeing the imploring gazes of his shidi, Yan Shēng reluctantly recounted his affair with Sheng Lu, Sword Sect's junior sect leader. 6 months ago, Yan Shēng had arrived on the southern continent for the sake of the famous drunken immortal wine offered in the taverns of Guāng City. He had been traveling for a long time at this point. His drinking buddies all knew that the more inebriated Yan Shēng became, the clearer his eyes. The only part of him that exposed his inebriation was his drunken words. That day, he drank from morning until the taverns closed for the night. He hadn't used his vital qi to dissipate the alcohol in his system, but plastered as he was, his stride was steady. No one on the street could tell he was so hammered he couldn't discern male from female or humans from animals. That was when he encountered Qing Lu, Sword Sect's Song Tong. Song Tong had been leading a group of his sect disciples down from the Qinglu Mountains to head to Ye City, and Guāng City had been one of the stops. Noticing the man blocking their way in the narrow street was someone in the small Ascension state, despite his slovenly appearance, Song Tong decided to yield the way, but the man stopped him. Out of courtesy, Song Tong introduced himself. I am Song Tong of Qinglu Sword Sect. Is there anything I can help you with, my friend? To his surprise, Yan Shēng only burst out laughing. Song Tong, as in candy giver? What a sweet name, you beautiful little thing. This was in the middle of the night, with barely anyone around. An enraged Song Tong lunged at Yan Shēng with his sheathed sword. Yan Shēng was soup-brained at this point, considering this was his first ever attempt at flirting with a girl. It was fine if she wanted to smack him around a bit, except, ow, this girl hit hard. Song Tong hadn't expected the man to take his attack without fighting back, and his one strike broke the man's leg. Even so, he couldn't bring himself to apologize. Cultivators in the small Ascension state took just a few days to recover from such minor injuries, so he would be fine. Song Tong left behind a bottle of medicinal pills and continued on his way. The story should have ended there. Junior sect leader Song had beaten the rascal and vented his anger, and all was well. Trouble was, a month later, Yan Shēng ran into his drinking buddies in Ye City and overindulged again. One of his buddies asked him, I heard you told Song Tong his name is sweet to his face. Ha ha ha, he's even sweeter than his name, Yan Shēng responded with a broad, nonchalant wave. That day, Tai-He Pavilion was packed with chattering crowds. In less than half a day, talk of the incident spread throughout Ye City and spiraled out of control beyond its walls. Since then, whenever junior sect leader Song was mentioned in the southern continent, what came to people's minds wasn't Qinglu's sword sect, his sobriquet, fleeting gray sword, or his sword style, the feathered raiment, but that he was sweeter than his name. So, Candy Giver, no, Song Tong was furious this time. He swore he would find Yan Shēng to fight him. Even with their differences in cultivation level, he didn't think he would lose. Yin Biyue thought this was perfectly understandable. If anyone called him drop-dead gorgeous like Biyue, Hidden Moon, he'd draw his sword and teach them a stern lesson. Meanwhile, Duan Chatterbox's focus went in the wrong direction. He grinned evilly. Which leg of yours did he break? Yan Shēng paused, then caught on to the implication. The right leg, get your dirty mind out of the gutter. Knowing he was in the wrong, Yan Shēng didn't want to fight Song Tong and planned to leave the southern continent. I haven't even held a girl's hand yet, he complained. Just because I misspoke one time, now I'm called a perv throughout the entire southern continent. Drinking only leads to trouble. He unstrapped the flask at his waist and took a swig. Yin Biyue wordlessly studied himself and his companions. Incredible. All three of them were wildly different characters. Shifu, did you actually pay attention when you took us in? Were we just the freebies you got in a buy a sword, get a disciple free promotional event? His tale told, Shēng remembered the reason his shidi were here. That's right, shidi, just let yourself go wild at the flower-plucking tournament. No one is your match. San Shisheng, where did you and Da Shisheng get this random confidence in me? Shēng emptied his flask and waved at them, not bothering to pick up the array flags he'd planted. Song might be back in a sec. You never know. Green hills never change, clear waters flow evermore. We shall meet again. The next round of drinks are on me. The instant he spoke, he was already some distance away. He soon vanished. As Yin Biyue watched Shēng's retreating figure, a serious problem quickly came to him. Xihua Peak and Bao Pu sect never saw eye to eye. Their match would be a nasty one. On top of that, Shēng had offended Qinglu sword sect, to which the prodigy Zhongshan belonged. How could they proceed with the flower-plucking tournament at this point? Chapter 23. Ye City was the nearest city to Mount Changyang. Those who came to attend the flower-plucking tournament were settled into their designated lodgings that had been arranged by the host. This year, of the competition's alternating hosts, those in the one mountain and 3 Taoist sects and the twin Buddhist temples, the organizing host was Qinglu Sword Sect. Since Qinglu Sword Sect was already on the southern continent and had a history with Ye City's administration, organization of the event had largely been a breeze. For the flower-plucking tournament, they'd put in some real effort, and not only for the sake of glorifying the profound wealth and history of their sect. If all went smoothly, the pride of their sect, Tempest Sword Zhongshan, would bring home the victory. Arrangements for the lodging of the numerous sects, the defense barrier at the foot of Mount Changyang, and the repair and maintenance of mountain paths had started half a year prior. Although Yin Biyue and his 2 companions had arrived a month early, the courtyard beside Qiushui Lake, designated for Zhang Ya's disciples, was ready. After Song Zhang dropped off Luo Mingquan at the lodge, he actually returned to the city gate to wait for Yin Biyue and Duan Chongshuan. Ye City had a long history dating back to when it was just a town at the beginning of the age of spiritual decline. Due to its ideal geographic location and smooth roads, it had been a prominent city for 1,000 years in the southern continent's northwestern region. Since the establishment of the flower-plucking tournament, the city had rapidly flourished and expanded. Now it boasted 8 large gates that tens of thousands passed through every day. Evening had fallen by the time the 3 convened and entered the city just in time for the garrison guard change. The foremost majestic city of the southern continent's northwestern region was at last revealing its grandeur to the group. Squads of soldiers marched through the city at an orderly pace, solemn and grave. Their heavy black armor gleamed and long black blades hung at their waists. None of the city's citizens batted an eyelash at their appearance. The old uncle working the wonton stall by the roadside was still hawking, the buskers on the bridge were still hollering, and the children on the streets were still romping with wooden swords and candy fruit skewers in their hands. The fury of the garrison guards had somehow miraculously blended into the liveliness of the city. Were the guards not for maintaining the neat and solemn image of the city? Why weren't any of the roadside stall vendors afraid of them? What do the garrison guards here do exactly? Yin Biyue asked. The 3 strolled down the large avenue. Duan Chongshan fanned himself as he noted the ladies waving their handkerchiefs from the high pavilions with a sparkle in his eyes. The garrison guards of Ye City? Tough job that, he replied. Never mind that they have to walk around everywhere in full armor in such hot weather. When they encounter cultivators brawling, they have to maintain order and request cultivators fight elsewhere to avoid hurting the children on the streets and the greenery. When powerful individuals start trouble in the city, they have to open the underground tunnels and lead women, seniors, and ordinary folks to shelter, and they have to handle the little things too. When they encounter old grannies hauling a hefty load, they have to help carry their stuff. Awful, isn't it? Luo Mingquan smiled and picked up where Duan Chongshuan left off. The street we're on right now is Ye City's main avenue. It's a high-traffic area, so if we were riding horses, these black armored guards would remind us to dismount lest we collide with pedestrians or street vendors. They maintain a stoic appearance for the sake of asserting the city's authority to deter visiting cultivators from acting up. The job might be a bit tough, but the salary is high. Duan Chongxuan said with a chuckle. Not to mention the people love them, and the city administration has their backs. Here, it's a great honor for the family if their son passes the examination and is selected to enter the garrison guard. Yes City is probably the only city like this in the whole southern continent. Yi Biyue was filled with emotions. Ordinary folks and cultivators, fine wine and swords, peddlers and black-armored guards found harmony here in this city. Abruptly, he remembered the root cause of this peace was Lord Ye, a powerful individual in the Great Ascension State who ruled as Ye City's master. Few in the southern continent dared to cause trouble in his jurisdiction. He was strong enough to make his own rules, strong enough to single-handedly protect his domain. Yin Biyue was a little in awe of the man. Yin Biyue was completely unaware that the reason he felt this way was because deep in his subconscious he also had something he wanted to protect. Perhaps it was the misty Xihua Peak. Perhaps it was his genuine and protective peers. Perhaps it was the majestic, endless ranges of the Zangya Mountains, or perhaps it was the disciples who waved their swords to send him off. The sentiment was extremely contrary to a villain's code of conduct, but Yin Biyue didn't notice anything amiss. The city lights lit up energetically as the sky darkened and the last shimmer of day faded. Large red lanterns hung on the eaves of major households. Gilded and ornate lanterns dazzled the charming song halls, and the warm glow of street-side taverns spilled into the streets through doors and windows alongside a mix of merry conversation and the sweet scent of drink. With its sea of lights and continuous streams of crowds, Ye City after nightfall was even livelier than during the day. The three strolled off the main avenue, leaving behind the lights, the music, and the hustle and bustle of the city center. The evening faded into stillness as they neared the southern district. Down alleyways of long bluestone streets, the interspersing light and shadows sometimes revealed the establishment plaques or stone auspicious beasts of deep courtyards. Past the affluent residential area of the South District was Qiushui Lake. Without the lights of the mortal world fighting for brilliance, the radiant stars bathed the land in their glow, and the surface of the lake shimmered with their reflections. It was tranquil, but not desolate. The new complex of courtyards stood by the lake without a whisper, blending seamlessly into the night. They stopped by the lake and breathed in the refreshing air as the night breeze caressed their faces. For the next month and a half of the flower-plucking tournament, they would be staying here. Including us, Zangya will have 30 people total here, the Mingchen said. There are 10 courtyards, meaning 3 to 4 in a yard. Yin Biyue hadn't yet understood the implication before Duan Chongxuan spoke up. Sure, let's stay in one together. When Yin Biyue remained quiet and seemed to silently acknowledge the arrangement, the Mingchen released a relieved breath and relaxed. Shall we then? The three headed for the courtyard closest to the lake. The largest courtyard on the north side would be reserved for the Xiping Peak Elder leading the team. There are attendants here who look after the housekeeping, but with only the three of us, their services aren't necessary. Shall I dismiss them? The Mingchen asked. It gets hectic with more people around, so that would be fine. Duan Chongxuan replied. What do you think, Sister Xiang? Yin Biyue nodded, his mind occupied by the thought that this geographical location was perfect for practicing the cold water blade. The courtyard, newly built 6 months ago, was neat and tidy. As it was flowering season, the white blooms peeking out from the green foliage on the magnolia tree in the yard added a touch of beauty to the small courtyard. The courtyard itself wasn't big. The 4 rooms were not distinguished as primary or secondary. Yin Biyue picked one randomly. A nephrite desk and a flowing silk canopy bed adorned the space. It was neither ostentatious nor shabby. He was very pleased with it. Suddenly, a large crash rumbled from the room next door, startling Yin Biyue. Next door was Duan Chongxuan's room. He picked up his sword and dashed outside, bursting into the room next door, only to see the chatterbox moving furniture. The silk curtain wooden bed had been swapped out with his own carved rosewood bed, canopied with silk gauze drapes. The desk was swapped for a long, lotus-patterned table inlaid with mother-of-pearl and curled bald legs. The loud crash earlier was the sound of a large yellow rosewood cabinet inlaid with various gems hitting the floor. No rare treasures stacked the room, but the nacre, pearls, gold, silver, and gemstones embedded in the furniture alone gleamed with a dazzling brilliance. Yin Biyue suspected Duan Changshuan could bring out a whole palace if he wanted to. Duan Changshuan noticed Yin Biyue, grasped why he was there, and hurried to apologize. Was I being too loud, Xiang? Yin Biyue shook his head. No, I just thought something happened to you. Duan Chatterbox's face split into a wide grin when he heard it. You've come just in time, Xiang. I was about to go look for you. He lowered his voice to a whisper. Miss Yun Xiangrang of Yes City, famed across the southern continent for her exceptional pipa playing skills, will be performing tonight at the Golden Autumn Pavilion. Understanding dawned on Yin Biyue almost immediately. Duan Changshuan was inviting him to a brothel. Step into the pavilion in the night, upon which ornamented lanterns sway and long sleeves flow, upon which a beauty plucked the strings in melodies mellow. Life without a visit to the brothel was incomplete. The mere thought of it was making Yin Biyue a little excited. It wasn't that he wanted to actually do something there. He just never experienced anything of the sort in all the lifetimes he had lived. The unknown was tantalizing. Besides, running to a gleaming brothel in the black of night was a thrilling thought. He was just about to nod when Duan Changshuan stiffened, his delight neutralizing into a serious expression. Across from Golden Autumn Pavilion is the Caihe Pavilion. A storyteller will be performing on stage there tonight, so captivating and enthralling in his accounts that he's won thunderous applause every time. It's very much worth going. What do you say, Sister Xiang? Yin Biyue was taken aback, then shocked and deeply ashamed of his own vulgarity in contrast to Duan Changshuan's virtue. He turned around and, following the latter's gaze, saw Luo Mingchen standing by the door with a faint smile playing on his lips. He had the poise of a gentleman. Shiji, you two are heading out to listen to a storyteller? He asked. Yep. Duan Changshuan nodded rapidly. Want to come with us, Luo Shixiang? Yin Biyue felt even more ashamed. Chapter 24. If the hobby of the Zhangya Mountains was gossip and spreading rumors, then Ye City's citizens' distinctive custom was watching and discussing spectacles. Long-time peace and prosperity had made the locals audacious. They dared to watch any scene and talk of any tales. They would talk of how the demonic cultivators of the eastern continent were tirelessly trying to revive the demonic dominion, how extravagantly wealthy the royalties of the northern continent were, how stunning the most beautiful woman of the Yanjian sect must be, and when their own city master, who worried them half to death, would marry at last. The people of Ye City enthusiastically gabbed about every major and minor event of the world, as if every participant was a prominent figure capable of shaping history. Even when night fell, business at Caihe Pavilion was no less than that of the Golden Autumn Pavilion. A stage was set up on the first floor of the main hall. A storyteller in long robes, having rinsed his mouth with the finest Mao Tian tea, saluted the full house audience below with a bow. Thunderous applause and cheers erupted. The main hall on the first floor was packed. Up on the second floor, in a secluded corner, sat 3 young men. One was a refined, poised gentleman, one was a dashing young master, and one was cloaked in black with his face obscured. Ye City bustled with all sorts of odd cultivators, so their attire didn't draw any attention. Yin Biyue sipped on the pot of Ba Shan sparrow's tongue tea Duan Changshuan had ordered, and felt a myriad of emotions stir within him. He never expected the 3 of them would actually come listen to a storyteller. Downstairs, the storyteller had already begun. He spoke from his diaphragm, and his powerful voice carried far and wide. I'm sure everyone here knows the flower-plucking tournament of Mount Changmyang, set to occur 2 miles outside our city, will be taking place soon. Strong young talents from many sects will gather, and all sorts of extraordinary abilities will be on display. It's a rare, once-in-a-decade grand event. Just when the crowd was thinking today's tale would be about the flower-plucking tournament, the storyteller changed the subject. But let's not discuss the tournament right now. What shall we talk about instead? Let's talk about Headmaster Xiansheng of the Central Continent and his prophecy. From below the stage, a cacophony erupted. As exciting as the flower-plucking tournament might have been, it had already been discussed for many days, and everyone could practically recite the legend of it by heart. Something new captured more attention. Yin Biyue tensed when he heard Headmaster Xiansheng named. What prophecy? The storyteller began. 2 stars appear. The dragon and the serpent clash. life and death within the same gate. Only one shall live. Shēng said this at Myung Lake 300 years ago. I'm sure some of you have heard it before, and some have not. Yin Biyue had not. He hadn't been born 300 years ago. He'd only vaguely recalled hearing about this prophecy somewhere. What does it mean? How should it be interpreted? I'm sure everyone is dying to know, so let's take it apart tonight. Amid the applause, the storyteller never left the crowd in suspense. Of the 28 constellations in the sky, there is a dragon, Guāng, Jinglong, the gold-necked dragon. It's the Guāng constellation in the 7 constellations of the east. As for the serpent, it is the Yi constellation in the 7 constellations of the south, Yi Hua Shi, the winged fire serpent. This wasn't profound astronomical knowledge. Those who knew a bit about it chimed in. Correct, well said. Everyone knows that. Tell us what the 2 constellations mean, some prodded. The storyteller smiled. Headmaster Shēng is a figure of prominence, one who could reckon all heavenly secrets. These constellations clearly refer to people. From the constellation positions in the sky, gold-necked dragon and winged fire serpent, the way I see it, correspond to the Zangya Mountains and Baopu sect. The prophecy points at the eldest disciple of Xihua Peak, Juàn, and the chief among Baopu's 7, Lin Yuangui. These 2 are the strongest among the younger generation of their respective sects and naturally fit with Shēng's prophecy. The people in the tavern were enjoying themselves, and it never occurred to them that 3 of Zangya's disciples would be present. Yin Biyue glanced at his 2 companions. Duan Changshuan and Luo Mingquan hadn't reacted to the tale so far. From the first floor, someone hollered, "Hey, we've got the clash of the dragon and the serpent, but how do you explain the life and death within the same gate?" Unvexed by the interruption, the storyteller fanned himself. The gate refers to a situation. It means the 2 will be forced into a situation where they must fight to the death. "Oh, you sound so sure," said the man. "What if you're wrong? If I'm wrong, come back and I'll reimburse your tea." The storyteller laughed heartily. Everyone knew that was a joke. The tall tales told at the Taihe Pavilion were speculation and exaggeration. No one would take them seriously. The storyteller continued to talk about the past conflicts between the Zangya Mountains and the Baopu sect, eliciting another bout of lively discussion inside the hall. He knew a bit about astrology, and having spent a long time in the chattering crowds of the tavern, he'd picked up various rumors about the sects. As he spoke of them now, with measured cadence, raising and lowering his voice to enhance the drama, the audience was enthralled. Yin Biyue soon lost interest in the tales. Luo Mingquan noticed and subtly flicked his finger that was resting on his teacup. Instantly, the clamoring noise of the full house could no longer reach them. Even the table nearest would only see 3 young men having tea in muted silence. Sensing the air around them shift amid the invisible barrier that enveloped them, Yin Biyue knew that Luo Mingquan was showing his breakthrough abilities for the first time. Yin Biyue, comfortable with the extra security, voiced his doubts directly to Duan Changshuan. Is that prophecy true? Yin Biyue knew Duan Changshuan, who seemed to have an extraordinary background, had his own unique channels for information. Since the matter concerned their elder Shixiang, he had to know something. Duan Changshuan didn't answer directly, but began to tell a story instead. Legend has it that 300 years ago, drinking in the night upon Myung Lake, Shēng emptied 14 jugs of 70-year-old drifting immortal wine. Utterly drunk, he belted a song as he floated in his boat. Yin Biyue really couldn't imagine the tea-brewing scholar beneath the locust tree singing like a drunkard. Starlight spilled onto the lake, and for 100 miles and more, the rippling surface shimmered. Duan Changshuan continued. Shēng lifted his gaze to the sky, and, amid singing Flight of Phoenix, he added the verses, 2 stars appear, the dragon and the serpent clash, life and death within the same gate, only one shall live. At the end of the song, fog sprang from the lake and lasted deep into the night. It wasn't until the fog had lifted that people realized Shēng had received a vision upon the lake and departed with the wind. The prophetic song was recorded and henceforth recited. It caused quite a stir at first. Many sects tried to fit their best disciples into the roles of the dragon and the serpent. There was no evidence of anyone being the right fit. As time went on, the hype died down until one year, our Shifu brought back Da Shixiang. That same year, Lin Yuangui joined Baopu sect. When the two of them first began to gain fame, the prophecy was brought up again by those with ulterior motives. Over the years, there have been clues that point to them actually fitting the prophecy, so it's not entirely baseless conjecture. Xiang, you've been focused on cultivation and haven't ventured into the world, so it's natural that you're not aware. But the story today really isn't anything new. This stuff spread over the western continent a long time ago. Duan Changshen ended his tale with a sigh. Do you believe it? Yin Biyue asked. I don't want it to be true, Duan Changshen admitted, but from what I know, Lin Yuangui's 4 pillars of destiny align with the Yi constellation. Though they say forcing yourself to glimpse the secrets of the universe can damage your cultivation state, not to mention the universe is unpredictable, Shēng was in a state of selflessness and otherlessness when he received that vision. He'd be 100 times more accurate than divining the future through inference. Besides, why would he lie? What about Xiang? Does he know about this? Duan Changshen nodded. He should. Yin Biyue felt a heaviness in his heart. He used to think his elder Shixiang carried Xihua Peak's honor, Chenshen Xiao's reputation, and Zhangya's safety on his back. Only today had he learned that life and death were yet another set of shackles binding him. It wasn't that Yin Biyue didn't have confidence in Jin Yu, it was that Lin Yuangui was also very strong. In fact, he could be considered the strongest fighter around. Aside from the second sage in Baopu sect, if Xiansheng's prophecy was correct, then what existed between them was no mere rivalry, but a fight to the death. Life and death, 2 shores of a river forever separated. It was a cruel fate. Guessing what was on his mind, Duan Chatterbox chuckled. Xiang, you don't have to be too worried. Shifu is around. He won't let anything happen to Xiang. Yin Biyue paused. To be honest, he didn't have much confidence in his bargain bin master who hadn't returned to the peak for centuries. Dua Mingquan chuckled as well, and the mood relaxed. Xiang, do you know what grudge Baopu sect holds against us? Duan Changshen asked. Yin Biyue nodded. Rumor has it that Shifu used the broad daylight sword to strike one of the Baopu sect elders in the Great Ascension State at Ba River. This wasn't a secret. That attack had lit up the entire Ba River for the whole night. It was so famous that all 5 continents knew about it. In the version spread by the Baopu sect, the sword sage acted unreasonably. Duan Changshen said, they say that when their elder heard the sword sage had taken in his first disciple, he just wanted to take a look. Not only was he sent back with insults, he was brutally stripped of his cultivation in retaliation. Do you believe that, Sister Xiang? No, Yin Biyue replied decisively. If the sword sage was that kind of person, he wouldn't have been able to raise disciples with temperaments the likes of Jin Yu and Liu Qishuang. Duan Changshen grinned. The truth was, Baopu sect at the time was split into 2 factions, the old and the new. The new faction advocated for natural cultivation, emphasizing personal enlightenment. The old faction, however, insisted that the fortune of heaven was limited, and that the more the sword sage monopolized, the less there was for others. The emergence of the sword sage had already threatened Baopu sect's dominant position in the western continent. That's why they were nervous with the appearance of Xiang. They were worried that Zhangya would produce a second sword sage in the future. Yin Biyue could guess how that progressed. Baopu sect had to have made a move against Jin Yu first. The elders of Baopu sect's old faction, together with the strong fighters of several smaller sects, kidnapped Xiang when the sword sage wasn't around. Xiang was only a child at the time. He couldn't even hold a sword properly, and was taken to the banks of the Ba River, where he was used to threaten the sword sage to drop his cultivation state. No, not just drop his state. They also demanded that the sword sage remove one of his own spiritual meridians. Yin Biyue was furious listening to the story. Nonetheless, he picked at one of the details. They? So it wasn't one elder from Baopu sect demanding this? A hint of derision flashed in Duan Changshen's eyes. Not just one, but 6, including the people from the other small sects. There were 12 of them in total. They believed that no matter how powerful the sword sage was, he couldn't kill so many of them at once, or rather, that he wouldn't dare to at the cost of his reputation. They believed that the law doesn't punish the masses, the numbers make right. Yin Biyue guessed how the story played out from there, and he was spot on. It had been so long since someone had attained the sage state in the world that they forgot the power of a sage. Duan Changshuan continued. The sword sage, using only one attack, killed 11. He impaired the Baopu sect elder's great ascension state and spared his life only because Da Shixiang was in his hands. He was afraid to hurt him by mistake. Baopu sect has been gravely impacted since then. The new faction knew they were in the wrong, so they didn't mention the incident again. While the elders from the old faction have died, their disciples remain, and they started to spread word in secret that the sword sage was cruel, bloodthirsty, and unreasonable. Yin Biyue finally broke into a smile. A great figure like Shifu would not be burdened by mere reputation. It was as though, through this story, the sword sage he had never met came alive. He could almost picture the brilliance of that sword strike upon the banks of the surging Ba River. No matter how the world saw him, Yin Biyue thought he was someone worthy of respect. Duan Changshuan smiled as well. Of course our dear old Shifu wouldn't care what those fleas say, so you don't need to worry too much about it, Shixiang. He took a sip of tea and sighed. If our Shifu had a limit, it would be Da Shixiang. Chapter 25. Over the next month, an influx of visiting cultivators showed up at Ye City. Likewise, the city guards quietly increased in number. Cultivators in various sect uniforms and the ever-present black armored guards added a touch of solemnity to this bustling and accepting city. Duan Changshuan never invited Yin Biyue out at night to listen to stories again, assuming it really had been to listen to stories. Yin Biyue spent his days practicing the cold water blade by the lakeside and his nights meditating, practicing the sword in his consciousness, and strengthening his spiritual mind. The small lakeside courtyard was very quiet. The hustle and bustle of Ye City did not reach here. If one were to look to the city center instead, there was a constant flow of people. Those in cyan robes adorned with 8 trigrams runes were members of the Baopu sect. Those in deep purple long shirts were in the Lianjian sect. And those in white robes embroidered with clouds were in the Zangya sect. Of the Buddhists, those in gray monastic robes were from Jiekang Temple, and those in bright yellow kasaya were from Xingshan Temple. Walking ahead of the rest were the hosts of this event, who were responsible for guiding and receiving guests. They were the disciples of Qianglu Sword Sect, dressed in white robes decorated with splashed ink landscapes. He Yan Yun followed behind the Xiping Peak Elder, as they traversed the bustling city streets toward Qiushui Lake in the South District. When she was young, she had often snuck down the mountain, but none of the places she'd seen were as new and interesting as Ye City. The Qianglu Sword Sect disciples were still around, though. She couldn't look like she didn't get out much. It'd be super embarrassing. She shot Yuan Xiaolian a look. Yuan Xiaolian returned it. Let's take a stroll at night to chow down on the good street food. Let's hit the wonton stall on the left first, then the cold rice cake stall behind it. The two came to a silent agreement and continued onward without any change in expression. The disciples of Qianglu Sword Sect let Luo Ningquan, Yin Biyue, and Duan Changshuan know their fellow Zangya disciples had arrived. The three welcomed the disciples to the lakeside courtyard complex and greeted Xiping Peak's elder. Then the large group of disciples began to pick their rooms, filling the peaceful lodge with their merry excitement. Every so often, a disciple would hail the three of them. After saying her hellos, He Yan Yun stopped Luo Ningquan. Shixiang, I've got so much to ask you. Yin Biyue understood her intentions in a heartbeat. Get him, girl. Your Shixiang hasn't met any beautiful female cultivators on the road, don't you worry. Duan Changshuan turned to Yin Biyue with a smile. It's quite lively today in the city. Shall we go take a look, Shixiang? What, were they finally going to visit that brothel? The complex was swarming with activity, so there would be no practicing his sword either way. he might as well take a stroll in the city. The pair had just passed through the affluent residential area when they ran into a spectacle. Any incident in Ye City could be seen from miles away because the black armored guards were very conspicuous. It just so happened that the center of the commotion were people they knew. A glimpse of a cyan Taoist robe flashed through the gaps in the dense crowd. Without another word, Duan Changshen dragged Yin Biyue through the throngs of onlookers and into a tea house across the street. Choosing a spot by the window on the second floor, he ordered rose pastries and a pot Junshen Mao Jian tea before settling comfortably to watch the show. The spot was perfect. They could even see the quivering fists of the Bao Pu sect disciples clearly. The dozen cyan-robed disciples, surrounded by city guards, happened to be the same ones Yin Biyue had encountered in Panlong Ridge. Both groups appeared upset. A couple of black armored guards were carrying a stretcher with someone lying in it. Acting as the representative for the disciples, He Lai was talking with the captain of the squad. He radiated the aura of the breakthrough state and appeared intimidating. If he'd been back at his sect's home in the Hengduan Mountains, no one in the cities and towns in a 100-mile radius would dare to defy him. But in Ye City, the squad captain of the garrison guards wasn't afraid of him, nor were any of the ordinary folks spectating the scene, for that matter. At He Lai's cultivation level, he could hear the crowd's whispers, even the distant speakers who kept their voices low. And they call themselves a major sect. What kind of manners are those? Bao Pu sect? Heh, when Zhang Ya's group entered the city, they were friendly and didn't cause any trouble. Yeah, old Uncle Li at the wonton stall also said that Zhang Ya's two girlies smiled at him. Zhang Ya again. He Lai's rage blazed listening to the onlookers. That was when the squad captain spoke up. According to city laws, damage to private property requires a compensation double the original value. Causing personal injury requires an apology, and the perpetrator is responsible for overseeing the payment of the follow-up treatment. Before He Lai could argue, one of the disciples behind him exclaimed, "How have we not paid? Do you know how valuable that bottle of Jade Dew pills is?" The squad captain appeared confused. "You have not apologized. This has nothing to do with how valuable the pills are," he explained. The Bao Pu sect disciples roiled with a mixture of shock, disbelief, and anger. In all their lives, never had they experienced anything like this. Apologizing to a strong cultivator was one thing, but they were actually being asked to apologize to a commoner? It had only been a collision with a vendor carrying a shoulder pole. The vendor was old. It wasn't their fault that he had been sent flying so easily. If they hadn't thought to be more courteous while away from home, they would never have given away such precious medicine. He Lai was the first to calm down, schooling his expression to one of impassiveness. He wanted to leave this place as soon as possible, instead of standing around surrounded like a circus animal. He gave a careless swipe of his hymns and bent at the waist for a half bow at the stretcher among the black armored guards. "Pardon us." He Lai didn't see any of the guards as a threat. Thanks to their low cultivation levels, the guards were inferior in his eyes. But aside from the city master in the Great Ascension State, Ye City had a number of cultivators in the Small Ascension State, and the guards belonged to the city's administration. He Lai had only just arrived at Ye City, and the flower plucking tournament hadn't yet begun. He didn't want to start anything at a time like this. "Now can we go?" one of the disciples snapped. The black armored guards cleanly stepped aside. As the group left, the squad captain shouted after them, "Remember to read the city law's handbook when you get to your lodgings." The people on the streets snickered behind their hands. A feeling struck He Lai, and he looked up. When he spotted the pair watching from inside the tea house, his face darkened like a storm cloud. Duan Changshen flashed him an unapologetic smile. Inside the small lakeside courtyard where the magnolia tree swayed in the wind, Liu Mingchen recounted his journey to He Yinyun. He told her of the long embankment in Yang City, of the brigands in Panlong Ridge, the Western Continent's official road that had led them to the coast, the lapping waves of the floating sea, and Xian Sheng's spatial magic embedded in the note. Finally, toward the end, He Yinyun interrupted him. "Shishishang, that's not what I wanted to hear about." Unvexed, Liu Mingchen asked, "What is it you want to hear about then?" He Yinyun hesitated, biting her tongue, but that only lasted a moment. She spilled, though she remained vague since she was too embarrassed to be blunt. I want to know how things are between you and Yin Shixiang. Which things? The flower plucking tournament is near, so she's probably asking how our training is going. Luo Mingchen smiled. Quite well. Things are much better than before. He Yan-yun's eyes lit up brilliantly. I just knew it. In her excitement, she flew out of the courtyard like a whirlwind. She needed to tell Ren Xiaolian the good news right this instant. Their handkerchiefs and banners hadn't been made in vain. Ha! Rest easy, Shixiang. I'll not stand in your way. Luo Mingchen was left standing in her wake, baffled. The novelty of Ye City passed swiftly, and on the second day after their arrival, the Zhangya disciples began to train, just as they'd always done in the mountains. Qiu Shui Lake was quiet as always until the day of the flower-plucking tournament's name drawing. The name drawing took place beside the rings at the foot of Mount Changming. Every contestant was to write their name upon the wall of sunken shadow and collect a number. Of the 320 contestants, the first 160 people would draw to determine their opponent. No one paid attention to the order in which they would draw lots, because whomever they would face depended entirely on luck. The wall of sunken shadow would display the result as soon as a lot was drawn, making any exchange impossible. The hosting Qianlu sword sect had also dispatched 2 elders of the small ascension state to maintain order. Yin Biyue and his 2 companions happened to be among the first 160, and they stepped forward to draw their lots. They passed through a sea of disciples voicing their reactions to their results. Oh no, I drew a Shimei from Lianjian sect. How can I possibly attack her? The one speaking actually looked quite pleased. I pulled Huai Ren from Jiekong Temple, a Buddhist cultivator. I've got nothing to worry about. Even if I don't win, I won't get hurt. This one looked relieved. One who wasn't as lucky was surrounded by his consoling peers. I'm out. I'm going home. Drawing Zhong Shen on the first round. What terrible luck is that? The line for drawing moved quickly. The lot tube was large and engraved with an array that prevented the spiritual sense from peaking. 2 elders in the small ascension state supervised the drawing. Duan Changshuan approached and reported his number, then casually drew out a slip. The ink only materialized when he unfolded the paper. The wall of sunken shadow gleamed with the name that corresponded with the number he had drawn. Beside the wall, the disciple responsible for inscribing the announcement bulletin wrote Duan Changshuan of the Zhangya Mountains versus Li Ling of Baopu sect. 4th match on the 4th day, ring number 3. Yin Biyue hadn't expected that any of the 3 of them would draw a Baopu sect member for their first match. Duan Changshuan's luck was remarkably on point. Luo Mingchen was next. Holding his lot, he said hesitantly, 185. I remember this is also a Baopu sect number. Sure enough, Wang Zhen of Baopu sect's name glimmered on the wall. Yin Biyue didn't like the look of that. 2 in a row, the odds are against us. Then he was rendered utterly speechless by his own lot. Yin Biyue of the Zhangya Mountains versus He Lai of Baopu sect, 2nd match on the 8th day, ring number 1. What a small world, Duan Changshuan marveled. That's all for this time. Join me again next time. Thanks for watching.